Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. With that said, though, let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day is, have you ever seen that meme on social media? This is not the topic of the day, but have you ever seen the meme on social media? Rose, Titanic, retelling the story, and she goes, "It's been 84 long years." Well, that's how I feel about the Caleb Williams transfer portal recruitment. Caleb Williams enters the portal over a month ago at this point. We think he's going to USC. Jackson Dart enters the portal. He visits USC. And then another week goes by, and then another week goes by, and then another week goes by, and we're wondering what the heck is going on. Is he really going to go to LSU? Is he really going to go to Wisconsin? Is there some sort of mystery school that we're not aware of? And then on Tuesday, out of nowhere, the bombshell drops. Caleb Williams has, in fact, committed, and he commits to, drumroll please, fight on to victory, fight on for all to see. That's right, Caleb Williams officially headed to USC. So a month after he entered the portal, a month after we all assumed that he was headed to USC, it becomes official. Caleb Williams headed to USC. I cannot tell you how big this is for not only the Pac-12, but for USC college football as a whole. So now that it's official, now that Caleb Williams is officially a Trojan, he's going to be leading the band with the sword in his hand. Let's discuss and let's talk about why this is so big and why this is so important. First of all, to even go back to the recruitment for half a second as it was, first of all, I give Caleb Williams and his family a ton of credit, right? They said from the beginning that they were going to do two things. They were going to take their time with the process, and they were going to ultimately pick the school that puts Caleb Williams in the best position to do what their stated goal has been all along, which is to be the number one pick in the 2024 NFL draft. So not this one coming up, not next one, but the one after. That was the number one stated goal. They're going to take their time, they're going to do what's right for the kid, and they're going to take the spot that puts him in the best position to be that number one overall pick in 2024. And so now that we live in this, not only the transfer portal world, but this NIL era world, it would have been easy to seriously consider LSU, and it's no disrespect to Brian Kelly and the bumping and grinding that Brian Kelly's doing down there in the Bayou, because I think Brian Kelly's going to be really good at LSU. I'm sure there were other schools coming in with crazy NIL offers, and I'm not going to sit here and be naive and assume that there's nothing on the table in terms of NIL for Caleb Williams at USC. But at the end of the day, the family said, listen, we are going to go to the school that is best going to prepare our son for the next level. I think they looked around. I think they took their time. In some ways, it kind of reminds me, if you guys and girls remember last summer in the college basketball transfer portal, Kofi Coburn enters the portal, ends up ultimately returning to Illinois. I didn't blame Kofi Coburn for looking around at the time. I did not blame him for considering all his options, and I don't blame Caleb Williams for considering all his options either. But ultimately, without knowing the family, I do think that he made the right decision in terms of going to USC and why it was, in fact, USC at all. And what I will say is, we all know, but I don't think it can be understated enough. USC got an absolutely incredible player on Tuesday morning. And I think this is an important part, right? Because I do think over the last month that we have spent so much time breaking down this recruitment, talking about NIL. What is this really about? Are they going to the highest bidder? Does the family really care? Are they doing it for attention? All this good stuff. That what we do tend to forget, this kid, when he was on the field, is absolutely incredible and was absolutely worth the wait for Lincoln Riley at USC. I do think because of the way the season ended for Oklahoma, because of the way that Lincoln Riley left under basically the cloak of darkness right after the Bedlam game, because of everything that has happened since the season, both with Oklahoma, with Lincoln Riley, with Caleb Williams, that we forget how good Caleb Williams was. He was awesome. 1,900 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, and basically half a season played in college football. Beyond that, what I would add is he played a lot of the season not healthy, but this is the stat line for Caleb Williams when he was fully healthy at Oklahoma in games that he played in. Obviously, the first couple games of the season, he was a backup. Then he takes over for Spencer Rattler in the Red River Shootout. How about this? 212 yards passing, 2 touchdowns in a win over Texas. That sounds pretty good. But then the following weeks, he gets named the starter. He's officially the starter. 18 of 23 passing, 295 yards, 4 touchdowns against TCU. 23 of 30 passing, 402 yards, 6 touchdown passes against Texas Tech. There was a Kansas game where Kansas really tried to slow down the tempo, but basically the 2 games that he played, where he was fully healthy, the starter played the entire game, 295 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 402 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, and then, oh, by the way, in the bowl game when he got healthy again, 21 of 27, 242 yards, and 3 touchdowns passing. And so I think that's an important thing to note in this Caleb Williams recruitment as well, is that because of all the drama, because of all the rumors, because of all the innuendo, because of all the leaks, I think we tend to forget how good this kid was. This kid was the number 1 high school quarterback in America in 2021 until Quinn Ewers reclassified, and he looked every bit the part when he stepped on the field, and that's why this is such a big story. That's why I've continued to cover it, and that's why I now want to push ahead and talk about just how big this is for the entire sport of college football, as well as the Pac-12 and USC, because I don't think you can understate how big this is for the entire sport of college football, right? We talk about in the NFL. In the NFL, we talk about if you don't have one of those dudes, if you don't have Aaron Rodgers, if you don't have Tom Brady, if you don't have Patrick Mahomes, if you don't have Josh Allen, you don't have a chance. Well, at the college level, Caleb Williams coming to USC all of a sudden changes the entire narrative of what USC is and what they could be. Not saying they're making the playoff next year. But you talk about the foundation that can be built thanks to Caleb Williams being in town. I don't think you can put I don't think we can oversell it, right? I think sometimes us in the media, we overhype, we oversell things. I don't think you can oversell the significance of Caleb Williams coming to USC. First of all, for USC, this is huge. This is huge because this is a program. This is one of those programs. There's about 6 or 7 of them in college football. This is one of those programs that when it's operating at the highest level, like Alabama is now, like Ohio State is now, like Clemson is now, like, LSU has in the past, like Florida has in the past, like Georgia is right now. When USC is operating at its absolute peak level, it is a program that can compete for national championships every year, and there's not very many programs that can say that. I mean, think about Michigan. We're going to talk about Jim Harbaugh in a second. As I record here, he is still officially the head coach of Michigan. That may change. Think about all the breaks that Michigan had to get themselves into the playoff this year. Ohio State's down. This happens. That happens. This break happens. That break happens. Notre Dame, great school, great football program. But at the absolute highest level, are they competing and winning national championships? They're really not. There's nothing wrong with Notre Dame. I bring it up because USC is one of those programs. USC is one of those programs that when it is operating at the highest level, it can compete and it can put a team on the field that can compete with anybody in college football. And it's been a long time since we've seen that. And Lincoln Riley coming and the building blocks that are now in place, Caleb Williams makes this program relevant again. I would say beyond just the importance for the school and for this and for that, I talked about it earlier, and I actually talked about it earlier this week when the Rams made the Super Bowl. But I don't think you can express enough how important this is for USC as a football program overall. When Clay Helton was fired, I discussed this. But living in L.A., seeing the L.A. sports scene grow over the last decade, USC, I thought, was really in a precarious situation right now, this second, as it pertained to their football future when they fired Clay Helton. I said, look, you can't bring in a B- hire. You can't bring in a Matt Campbell. You can't bring in a guy that isn't going to rejuvenate and re-excite the fan base. And to its credit, I didn't think USC absolutely nailed this hire with Lincoln Riley, and obviously the trickle-down effect is now having Caleb Williams. Because I'm telling you, if USC had hired Matt Campbell or USC had hired one of these second or third tier guys, I truly believe that there was a chance that USC football was never the same on the national scale that it was a decade ago with Pete Carroll. I talk about it all the time, but when Pete Carroll was in town, never forget, there was no NFL in LA. The Lakers were kind of going through this weird thing. It was post-Shaq and Kobe. They were good, but they weren't great. And USC ran this town, but LA is a completely different town now that that USC is competing in. And if they didn't get this hire right, if they didn't do what they needed to do to put this program back in its place at the highest level, this was a program that I truly believe could have become irrelevant not irrelevant, but relatively irrelevant and never reached that level. Well, now they got Lincoln Riley, now they got Caleb Williams, and I truly believe that this is a program that in time can compete at the highest levels. Speaking of which, the Pac-12. I cannot express how big this is for the Pac-12 as well. And you know why. It's because the Pac-12 has stunk over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I use this stat all the time. But the Pac-12 in its history has won one college football playoff game. You know which game that was? That was the first game ever of the college football playoff when Oregon beat Florida State in the first game ever of the college football playoff. And the Pac-12 hasn't won a college football playoff game since. And the biggest reason, you can go to a lot of different reasons. Oregon's been on the brink. Washington made the playoff one time. But the biggest reason that the Pac-12 has struggled is because their best program has not been operating at the highest level. I say it all the time. But think about the Big Ten. If Ohio State was going 5-7 or 7-5 or 8-4 every year, the Big Ten just wouldn't feel as relevant on a national scale. Don't even get me started on what the ACC would look like if Clemson stunk. But that has been the Pac-12's biggest problem. The Pac-12's biggest problem has been that their best brand that can operate at the highest level, as I just said, has really, really struggled over the last couple years. And now, Caleb Williams with Lincoln Riley rejuvenates this conference in a way that, again, I don't believe that USC is going to be a playoff contender next season, but it shouldn't be all that long. And it's so important at this moment in time for the Pac-12 because for all intents and purposes, it does not feel as though we are expanding this playoff anytime soon. We've talked about it in previous weeks. We've heard the meetings. We've heard the conversations. It doesn't feel like it is on the forefront of things for people who run this sport. And so because of it, this is the world that we're going to live in. And guess what? Ohio State ain't slowing down. Alabama ain't slowing down. Georgia ain't slowing down. Oklahoma might not be slowing down for the next few years that they're in the Big 12. Clemson, I think we all expect to bounce back, and Clemson's quote-unquote awful year finished with a 10-3 overall record. And so at some point for the Pac-12 to get back into that national conversation, they are going to need a program to elevate itself. And I do think USC is going to be that team over the next 3, 4, 5 years. And that's not like a hot take or an original opinion. I think most people feel that way. But it all starts on Tuesday with the addition of Caleb Williams, in addition, of course, to Lincoln Riley. Finally, I think it's important for college football, man. College football, and we talk about this all year, all offseason, all regular season, all whatever. College football, I hate to say it because I love the sport, is increasingly becoming a regional sport. A lot of important games in the SEC. A lot of important games involving Clemson. A lot of important games involving Ohio State. A lot of important games involving Oklahoma. But once you get past that, there's not all that much going on. And so I'm not going to get into the ratings because the ratings are actually pretty good. But at the end of the day, college football will only be at its best when every region of the country, or virtually every region of the country, is invested in the sport as a whole. Guess what? The Southeast is always going to care. The Midwest, thankfully, we have Ohio State and emerging Notre Dame, maybe Michigan, who knows. The Southwest, we got Oklahoma for the time being. But that West Coast, we need that West Coast for the health and overall good of college football. And so, yes, Caleb Williams doesn't solve all those problems. No, I don't believe that USC is going to be in the playoff picture next year. They still have a lot of work to do along the defensive line. They have a lot of work to do around the offensive line. But I'll tell you this, they are a lot closer over the last couple months. You bring in Lincoln Riley. He's crushed the transfer portal. He brought in Travis Dye from Oregon. He brought in a bunch of other guys, specifically at the skill positions. But now you got that missing piece. You got that guy that other great players want to play with in Caleb Williams. And I'll mention this too. Keep in mind, unless these transfer portal rules get tightened, unless we get some sort of window with transfers and when you can leave and when you can't, there's going to be another wave of guys that leave after spring practice And I truly believe that USC will be a benefactor of it. We're already seeing the trickle-down effects in the 2023 and 2024 recruiting classes. USC, as I record here, has the number 1 recruiting class in 2023. So this has been a great month or so, 6 weeks since Lincoln Riley took over as the USC head coach. But beyond that, Tuesday was a great day for USC. It was a great day for the Pac-12. And it was a great day for college football as Caleb Williams is officially a USC Trojan.